I used to think Camille hung the moon. She was my big sister, 5 years older, and the closest thing I had to a built-in best friend. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. Don't forget to like, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel. Now back to my story. I remember her climbing into my bed during storms, braiding my hair, making up stories with me. When she laughed, I felt safe. When she held my hand in public, I felt seen. But something changed when she turned 13. It was like a door closed. On her birthday, we threw her a little party at home. I remember watching her unwrap gifts and beam at her friends. But when I tried to sit beside her on the couch, she shifted away. She wouldn't look at me, she didn't speak to me. That night, I overheard her telling Mom she didn't want me in her room anymore. She wanted space. That was the word she used, as if I were some clutter to put in the attic. At the time, I thought maybe she was just growing up. Maybe teenagers got like that. But deep down, I felt something snap. And I think she did too. A couple of years later, everything shattered. Our parents divorced, the kind of split that sucked the air out of the house. One day, Mom packed up the car, told us we were moving out of Dad's place, and we drove away in silence. But the silence didn't last long. When we pulled into the new driveway, Camille flung open the car door and exploded. "I hate you," she screamed at Mom. "And I don't want to live with her." Pointing straight at me, her face was red, twisted with anger I couldn't understand. She stomped into the house, and I sat frozen in the back seat, trying not to cry. We were going to be sharing a room again, just like before, but this time, the space between our beds felt like a canyon, and I didn't know it yet. But that day was the beginning of a silence that would last nearly 2 decades. I remember the weather that day. Overcast, heavy, like even the sky knew something big was about to break. Mom had packed most of our things in boxes the night before. She didn't cry, she just moved. Mechanically, like a woman trying to escape a fire without making a sound. Camille didn't say much either. She stayed upstairs most of the time, earbuds in, pretending we weren't about to split our whole world in half. I was 10. When it was time to leave, I squeezed my stuffed lion to my chest and looked around the living room one last time. The place where I had learned to ride a scooter, watched Saturday cartoons, and eaten burnt popcorn. My dad gave me a tight hug at the door and whispered, "Be good, okay?" I didn't know then that it would be years before I saw him again, without a custody exchange looming between us. The car ride was dead silent, the kind of silence that feels louder than shouting. Camille sat beside me, but turned her body completely toward the window. Her shoulders tense, lips pressed into a line. When we pulled into the new place, smaller, unfamiliar, beige, Mom cut the engine and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. That's when it happened. Camille flung her door open and screamed, "I hate you," at Mom. "I hate both of you. I didn't want this, I didn't want her." She pointed directly at me, like I was something to be ashamed of. My stomach dropped. I thought she'd just been sad. Angry, sure, but hate. I was her sister. I hadn't done anything, I was just there. She slammed the front door behind her, and I stayed in the car, stunned. I could still hear the echo of her voice, ringing in my ears. Later that night, we were assigned the same bedroom, just like old times. Only now, Camille slept with her back to me, and a wall of silence I didn't build grew between us. I didn't know how to take it down, and honestly, I don't think she ever wanted me to. Sharing a room with someone who hates you is like sleeping next to a storm that never breaks. Camille didn't speak to me, not in the mornings when we got dressed, not in the evenings when we brushed our teeth. She didn't ask to borrow lotion, didn't complain about my alarm clock, didn't even grunt in response to a good night. She existed around me like I was air, always there, never acknowledged. But silence can bruise too. Every time I tried to speak, she'd roll her eyes. Or worse, get up and walk out like my words were poison. It wasn't always what she said. It was the way she refused to say anything at all. I was 10, maybe 11, and I started to believe that I must have done something horrible. Maybe I cried too much. Maybe I was annoying. Maybe I really did ruin something and just didn't know it. I stopped telling stories at dinner. I'd begin, and Camille would groan or sigh dramatically. And my mother, God bless her, would just tell me to let it go. No one ever asked why Camille was so angry. No one stopped to defend me. They just tiptoed around her. And I started doing the same. She threw jabs sometimes, not often, but enough, words like leech, crybaby, spoiled brat, and I believed her. When someone you used to admire turns into your critic, it carves holes in your self-worth. The worst part, I still missed her. Even as she ignored me, I wanted her to like me again. I wanted the big sister who used to braid my hair, who once made up bedtime songs just for me. I kept thinking if I just behaved better, if I kept quiet, got good grades, stopped needing anything, maybe she'd come back. But Camille had already drawn her line in the sand. And it didn't matter how hard I tried. She wasn't interested in being my sister anymore. At night, I'd face the wall and pretend to sleep. I learned not to cry loudly. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. But inside, something small and soft in me was slowly hardening. Camille left for college when I was 13, and I should have felt relieved, free. Even no more icy silence, no more cutting glares, no more navigating landmines in my own bedroom. But when she closed the door behind her, she took something with her, the final thread of hope that we'd ever be close again. She didn't say goodbye, she didn't hug me, just packed her things, hugged our mother, and rolled her suitcase down the driveway like she couldn't get away fast enough. I watched from the window, I didn't cry. At first, the house was quieter, but not in a peaceful way. More like something was missing. Like the echo of someone's voice you hadn't heard in years, but still expected to fill the hallway. I kept waiting for a call, a text, a postcard, anything, but nothing came. Camille had disappeared into her new life, and I wasn't invited. Mom acted like this was normal. Sisters fight, she'd say. She just needs space. Space, she'd had 5 years of it. And somehow, it still wasn't enough. I tried to be the perfect daughter after she left. Straight A's, chores done without asking. Never talked back, never asked for much. I thought if I could just be easy to love, maybe someone in the family would finally see me. But even in her absence, Camille's shadow stretched long. At family dinners during holidays, she'd breeze in with stories about dorm life, professors who adored her, friends with fancy internships. I'd sit at the corner of the table, quietly listening, waiting for her to glance my way. She never did. Once, I tried to ask her about her major. Just a simple question. She turned to Mom and said, "Why does she always have to insert herself into everything?" Then laughed, everyone laughed. I smiled too, pretended I didn't feel the sting. I learned how to make myself small. Camille was the success story. I was the background noise. And deep down, I started to believe I deserved it. It had been over a decade since Camille and I had spoken, really spoken. Life had marched on. I was in my late 20s, working, building my own quiet routines. The silence between us had become a fact of life. Familiar, tolerable. Then in early 2022, she messaged me. At first, I thought it was a mistake, just a casual, "Hey, what's up?" Like years of silence hadn't passed between us. I stared at the screen for 10 whole minutes, wondering what the catch was. But curiosity got the better of me. I replied. We met up for coffee a week later. To my surprise, it wasn't awkward. It was nice, unnervingly nice. We laughed like we were catching up after a few months apart, instead of nearly 15 years. She talked about leaving a long-term relationship, selling her house, wanting to be closer to family. She was softer than I remembered, more open, even vulnerable. And I felt myself slipping. We started hanging out more. Movies, late-night food runs, long drives with music playing and no destination. For the first time in forever, I wasn't her burden or her background noise. I was her sister again. We even talked about the past, lightly, skimming over our childhood, hinting at our shared pain without diving in. She made a few remarks about how messed up things had been with our parents. I nodded, maybe we were healing. I let my guard down. I told her things I hadn't told anyone, about how isolated I'd felt growing up, how I never understood why she hated me. She didn't say much, but she listened. And that was enough, I thought. I started imagining holidays together again. Sisters' trips, a second chance. I should have known better. Because then she met him, her new boyfriend. And just like that, everything changed. It happened gradually, at first. I didn't think much of it. She canceled a dinner here. Took longer to respond to texts there. Just busy, she'd say, or he's taking me out tonight. I smiled through it. I knew what it felt like to be newly infatuated. I wasn't jealous. I just hoped this time I wouldn't be forgotten. But I was. Texts went from daily to weekly to maybe. Calls stopped altogether. Plans were postponed indefinitely. The warmth we had rebuilt cooled like leftover coffee. Fast, bitter, undrinkable. When I finally asked her about it, gently, she exploded. "I can't drop everything for you." She snapped over text. "I have a life. I'm not here to babysit your feelings." Babysit. I wasn't asking for much, just consistency. Maybe a conversation, but I didn't push. Not until weeks went by, and I heard nothing. Not even when I sent a check-in message on her birthday, and got no response. So I asked, did I do something wrong? She replied with an essay, cold, Clinical, detached. Paragraphs outlining my disruptive behavior as a child. How I made her and our mother miserable. How I had always demanded attention. How reconnecting had been a mistake. I read the message twice, 3 times. Each word landed like a slap. I sat on the floor and wept, not because it hurt, though it did, but because I realized the person I had forgiven, trusted and welcomed back, had never really come back at all. The reunion was a lie. Maybe she needed me for a moment, someone to fill a gap during her loneliness. But once she felt whole again, I became disposable. Again. This time I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself, I just let it end. But even silence has an echo, and hers still followed me. When Camille vanished from my life again, it didn't just leave a gap. It stirred a storm. My grandmother and father couldn't understand. Or maybe they chose not to. To them, sisters were supposed to be close. They carried childhood nostalgia like a badge, forgetting that mine was bruised. They remembered birthday parties and matching dresses. I remembered slammed doors and harsh words. "She's still your sister," Grandma would say, clasping my hands like she was praying me into forgiveness. "She's going through a lot," Dad would add, always ready to explain her behavior away. "Just reach out, she needs you." "But does she want me?" I asked once. That shut down the conversation. No one ever asked if I was okay. No one asked what it felt like to be publicly blamed for someone else's childhood, to be used and then discarded, to try, really try, and get scorched in the same exact way. Instead, I became the difficult one, the stubborn one, the one holding a grudge, as if boundaries were bitterness, as if not wanting to be hurt again made me vengeful. "She hasn't asked about me, has she?" I questioned Grandma one afternoon. "No," she admitted softly, eyes downcast. Exactly. Why was I the only one expected to mend this? Why did everyone act like I had torn something when I'd only tried to survive? When I brought up how Camille once sent me an entire essay condemning me for being a bad child, Grandma waved it off. That was in the past. But words have a long shelf life, and those ones still echoed in my mind every time someone told me to be the bigger person. Eventually, I stopped explaining, stopped defending my decision to go no contact. If they didn't see the damage, maybe they weren't meant to. But then last week I got a text. A corporate-style message, cold, impersonal, like she was RSVPing to a conference. Camille wanted to fix things. And all I could think was, fix what? The bridge you keep setting on fire. The text came on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, sipping my coffee, mindlessly checking my notifications, when I saw her name light up my screen for the first time in over 2 years. "Hi, I've been thinking a lot about things lately. I think it's time we talk and clear the air. I hope you're open to reconnecting." No "how are you," no apology, no ownership. Just a bland, polished message that read like it was drafted by HR. For a second, my heart fluttered, maybe from habit. Maybe from that small, reckless corner of my heart that still wished she meant it. But then I felt the pit in my stomach, the warning I'd learned to trust. There was no warmth in that message. No emotion. No sign she understood the weight of her past words. No acknowledgement of the pain she'd caused me. It was all transactional, like she was checking a box. I didn't reply. Instead, I reread her essay from 2 years ago, the one where she blamed me for everything wrong in her life. It was still there, tucked away in a private folder on my phone. I didn't keep it to hold a grudge. I kept it to remind myself I hadn't imagined it, that the wounds were real. People always talk about forgiveness like it's magic, like you can snap your fingers and erase decades of pain. But forgiveness isn't forgetting, and it definitely isn't returning to the scene of the hurt, just because someone says they're ready now. I sat with the text for a full day, then I archived it. No response, no explanation, just peace. Not silence born from fear or confusion, but silence born from clarity. Because sometimes healing isn't about fixing the relationship. Sometimes it's about accepting that some people only come back to rewrite their part in your story. And I wasn't going to let her. For the first time in my life, I chose not to chase, not to explain, not to beg to be understood. It felt strange at first, like walking away from a house you'd lived in your whole life, even if it was falling apart inside. But slowly, that strange feeling settled into something firmer. Freedom. Camille didn't follow up after her message. No call, no "did you get my text?" Just silence, which confirmed what I already suspected. Her attempt was never really about me. It was about her easing her guilt, checking her conscience. And I was done being her emotional garbage disposal. But that didn't stop the family from weighing in. "Maybe she's changed," Grandma offered. She's trying, isn't she? Said Dad. Trying what exactly? To skip accountability. I finally looked them both in the eye one day and said, if she wanted a relationship, she wouldn't have sent a message like she was addressing a coworker she barely liked. They had no response. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just breaking ties. I was breaking a pattern. The unspoken rule in our family that said we sweep things under the rug, that we pretend the wound never happened, as long as everyone smiles at dinner. But I wasn't pretending anymore. For years, I thought choosing peace meant keeping the peace, staying silent to avoid rocking the boat. But peace, I learned, is also found in walking off the boat entirely when you realize you were the only one rowing. So I did things differently. I stopped showing up to family events where I was expected to play nice. I stopped letting others define what family should look like for me. And most importantly, I stopped seeking Camille's love in the echo of who I wished she'd been. Because I finally understood. Sometimes, healing means giving up the apology that may never come and living well without it. There's a quiet kind of power that comes with letting go, not in bitterness, not in anger, but in clarity. For years, I waited for Camille to become the sister I needed. I bent myself into shapes to keep the peace, convinced that if I loved hard enough or tried long enough, she'd meet me halfway. But the truth is, some people don't want peace, they want control. They want your silence, not your voice, your compliance, not your boundaries. When I chose not to respond to her message, I wasn't being cold. I was protecting the version of myself I had fought so hard to grow into. I looked back at our history, and for once, I didn't feel guilt, I felt relief. Relief that I had finally stopped trying to rescue something that never truly held me with love. I was no longer chasing her approval or seeking family validation. I had redefined love on my terms, not as obligation, but as consistency, safety, and truth. The family eventually quieted down. Maybe they got tired. Maybe they finally saw I wasn't backing down. But most importantly, I noticed something shift within me. I stopped feeling like the broken one. I stopped shrinking when Camille's name came up. I started building my own traditions, my own peace, my own space, free from manipulation and guilt. And in that space, I flourished. No longer the little sister, begging for closeness. No longer the scapegoat for someone else's pain. I was just me, whole, healing, moving forward. Some wounds don't close with apologies, they close with boundaries. And mine finally had one. I don't know if Camille ever understood what she lost. Maybe she thinks she won the last word by sending that message. But I know the truth. The real win was not replying. Because sometimes, the greatest act of love is choosing yourself, fully, unapologetically, and finally. Please like, share with your family and friends, and subscribe to our channel for more stories.